Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And that brings us to a title which actually currently exists in the Criterion Collection at spine number 38. But this year, on this occasion, 2023, the Criterion Collection has decided to re-release this title, relying upon, among other things, the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format option. And I'm speaking of a work which is described as being from the year 1967. And the name of the filmmaker is Seijun Suzuki. And the name of the work in Japanese is Koroshi no Rakuin, or as it's known in English, Branded to Kill. This is the work from the year 1967, and it is from the filmmaker, artist extraordinaire, who is the one, the only, Seijun Suzuki. And among its really brilliant, fantastic cast, we have people like Annu Mari and Mariko Ogawa, and starring the one, the only, Joe Shishido in one of the most famous and most brilliant roles, and it is a real important and fundamental component in this work, which is, I think, can be described in many terms, many fashions. Ultra cool, stylish, hip, a type of very steely, witty, jazzy, noirish, ultra stylish film that is playing with form, warping the form, almost going absurdly berserk with the form of cinema, to the point of being an utterly WTF cinematic experience to the max and then some, and so much more. We have this work, Seijun Suzuki's work, Nikatsu film, and that's also a story in and of itself. The one, the only, Branded to Kill. And so there is, I think, so much to say about this work, Branded to Kill, and so much to celebrate and re-celebrate and to visit and revisit and to just have so much fun with. And so every opportunity we can get in order to enjoy and just have fun with work of cinema such as Branded to Kill, I think it's an opportunity definitely worth having. And so this year, 2023, the Criterion Collection has re-released this film, which again currently exists in its physical media catalog. I have the earlier Blu-ray, which is right here. And indeed, this is a film that had been part of the Criterion Collection catalog from the very beginning, back in the latter part of the Laserdisc era, and then also in the early DVD era of Criterion, which is what I have here. But this is a film, therefore, that has had a type of long history with Criterion's physical media catalog history, and that history continues today and this year with this, which is now employing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format, and we'll talk a little bit more about the details of the presentation when we get to the latter part of this video discussion. But in any event, here, yes, another opportunity to celebrate the wildly inventive and imaginative and truly off-the-wall, chaotic, berserk, and ultra cool, jazzy, hip, stylish, and clever and confusing and quite a wild ride indeed of a film. This is Branded to Kill. So, the story or plot structure, I think, can be focused in on one of our, or perhaps our main character. This is the Joe Shishido character, Goro Hanada, and he is a hitman, an assassin, working in the underworld, a criminal element. And we understand, too, that he's hired for certain numbers of jobs. We also understand that within this hierarchy, there is a type of very interesting and perhaps very, I think, well, there's a very interesting way in which the assassins are ranked or have a type of their own assassin hierarchy in terms of numbers, number 3, number 2, and number 1. And so we have number 3, Hanada, and we see Hanada engaged with certain jobs and certain types of money exchange, and already we feel from the very outset a type of unease, a type of distilled unease in the air, both within and without, both externally and internally. And so the plot or story structure of this great film, Branded to Kill, I think we can focus in on the Japan criminal underworld, the Tokyo underworld, with assassins and double cross and money exchange and the like. And we have amongst this really sort of sordid cast of characters in this very seedy and criminal element environment. We have our main character, Goro Hanada, who is the Joe Shishido character. And we understand that he is an assassin in this world. And not only is he an assassin, but we understand, too, that there is a very interesting hierarchy applied to the assassin aspect, or the assassins themselves, in a type of ranking system. In terms of the top-ranked assassin and then the various other assassins that are ranked accordingly within this hierarchy system. And so we understand that Goro Hanada is ranked, or is number 3. And the question, or one of the questions, therefore, is perhaps who are the other assassins? Who are the other people that might be part of this very interestingly applied hierarchy? Maybe we might have to watch the film in order to find out more of those details. But in any event, within this hierarchy, within this structure, within the world, this criminal underworld, we follow the Joe Shishido character as he meets various people along the way. Some people having to do with jobs and hits and other things that require his services for pay. And that also leads to the idea of double cross and triple cross and quadruple cross and betrayal and revelations galore to the max, which is also applied very fervently and with an ultra stylized eye by the very nature of Seijun Suzuki and the way in which Seijun Suzuki and company are presenting information to us. It's a film that then continues on within this Seijun Suzuki styling, where we understand that Hanada, the Joe Shishido character, or the assassin character, is hired for a job to assassinate a particular figure. But the job goes very, very suddenly and very shockingly wrong and awry, or does it? And that forms part of the backbone of, say, the mystery element and the double-cross element and the betrayal element. And then you enter into the mix within this web of lies and deceit and sexual energy and desire, and also the thirst and perhaps the twisted need to kill, as well as the twisted need and desire to climb the ranks of this assassin hierarchy from number 3 all the way to number 2, and perhaps maybe to number 1, and perhaps needing to eliminate the competition along the way. You throw into this mix various other characters and relationship dynamics that we find with respect to our main character. For example, the characters portrayed by Mariko Ogawa and also Annu Mari, and they each in their own way relate to Hanada, both in terms of a type of maybe intimate relationship, sexual desire, as well as perhaps also an underlying hidden agenda or set of agendas that may seal the fate or potentially threaten to seal the fate of our hero or anti-hero, type of dark and very morally maybe amoral character, or perhaps even immoral character. That is our main character of the assassin Hana, the Joe Shishido character, and how their relationships may or may not play a key or pivotal role in the various forms of intrigue and double cross that are definitely along the way when we are in for the ride that is the wild ride that is branded to kill. And along the way, we have as I mentioned, the ultra stylish trappings and the visual display of Seijun Suzuki, who seems to be warping time and space while telling this story, seems to be giving us a sense of sudden bursts and jumps of feelings of lacks or leaps of logic that can only exist, that can only be logical in the hands and minds of filmmakers like Suzuki, where you have the way in which things are framed, the way in which music is overlapped onto the scene to create a sense of the heightened unreal, and to give us a sense of almost a nouvelle vague sensibility of anything is possible in terms of the way in which information is presented. So it is a very ultra realized and truly breathtaking way of approaching this story. And I think to the way in which it can almost seem to zigzag in and out of a cinematic grammar, I think is also very reflective of the way in which this plot seems to zigzag in and out of a sense of a trajectory in a very brilliant way. As I mentioned, our character seems to be trying to traverse this very dangerous terrain of the underworld, both in terms of his personal relationships and also the betrayals that await him. And he's trying to zigzag his way through. And along the way, as he zigzags, the film itself seems to zigzag through this brilliant array of warped stylization that is truly breathtaking and very bonkers. And as I mentioned, very ultimately and utterly WTF to the max. And it's brilliant in that way, branded to kill. And we have here as well very ultra stylized presentation and scenes, and also really very memorable and very funny and humorous scenes, and also scenes of a lot of shock and awe, and also very almost hip, almost pop art type of expressions of violence and sexuality, and also almost humorous ways in which, say, culture and a type of cultural aesthetic is also being displayed and portrayed, or perhaps even subverted, or even maybe quote-unquote modernized, end quote, in the hands of Seijun Suzuki and others. Take, for instance, the image of the butterfly, or the concept and image and the sight and sound of a hot, steaming white rice. Also take into account the way in which there's a lot of highly charged scenes of, say, very maybe highly charged scenes with a lot of sexual tension, and very energized and at the time quite provocative and maybe even shocking degree. And also the way in which violence is portrayed, and suddenly the bursts can be so sudden and quite abrupt to be almost humorous at the same time being horrific, which I think is the great genius that is the Suzuki work. It can be so many things at once. It feels like a pastiche or a collage of things and ideas and feelings that can feel so disconnected to be, frankly put, absurd. But that is, I think, the point of the aesthetic, and also it's meant to, I think, give us a sense of a way in which we can try to connect the dots on the one hand, while also acknowledging a type of carefree spirit on the other. And so it has a sense of being modest, but also being very expressionistic and even experimental at the same time, which I admire very, very much. And you also get a sense of this too. Seijun Suzuki, the filmmaker, in some of the supplements, he has the personality, as he's speaking, of being very modest and being very down to earth. And you can get a sense of that with his cinema as well. There's a sense of a type of modesty while being so shocking and so provocative and so in your face, to be utterly sublime and a true delight indeed. And if I could say anything more about this work, Branded to Kill, I could say that it, I think, serves to be a very vital and important work in the history of the career of Seijun Suzuki, not least of which being the way in which it affected his relationship with the studio's Nikkatsu, and that's touched upon in a number of the supplements, and we'll touch a little bit upon that later in this video discussion. But taking that aside, looking at this work, I think in the context of Suzuki's career overall, I think one can say that this film is one of the most, if not the most, important and I think emblematic film of Suzuki in the 1960s. And perhaps I dare say, too, that it is one of the key, important, emblematic works of Seijun Suzuki ever. And so it is one of my favorite works by Suzuki. I love this work very, very much. And so if you are looking for a great example of what Seijun Suzuki's films are like, if you're looking for a truly off-the-wall and one-of-a-kind film experience that is so cool and so WTF and everything in between, and once you've seen it, you will not forget it. It's very, very memorable in that way. If you're looking for that type of film, which has a lot of highly charged, energetic scenes, very intense moments, very ultra cool moments, and also it has a feeling of 60s Japan through and through. If you're looking for that experience, then look no further, because you have the opportunity right before you with this work, this wonderful work from Seijun Suzuki, and it is Branded to Kill. The Criterion Collection has released this film, or re-released this film, Branded to Kill, again at spine number 3038. And as some of you may know, Criterion has released this film on a number of occasions over the course of its very prestigious and very long history, back during the late period of the Laserdisc era, and then continuing on into the DVD, early DVD era. And so here's the early DVD of this, Branded to Kill. And then we have a little bit later, around 2011, yes, the Blu-ray release, which was at the time purported to be based on what was described at the time as a new high-definition digital restoration. And at the time it was, if I were to just pull out here the details about the transfer, yes, it was described as a new high-definition digital transfer created from a fine-grain master positive. But now, this year, in 2023, we have the occasion of Branded to Kill being now re-released, but this time on this 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo package. And I open it up here and you can see the two discs, the 4K UHD disc and then behind it the Blu-ray disc. And you can see, on this side would go the fold out, and I've just taken the liberty of removing the fold out, but it would go on this side of the interior plastic casing like so. But this is the 4K UHD disc and then the Blu-ray disc. And I mention that because the 4K UHD includes this new 4K restoration, and the notes in the fold-out indicate that, and I quote, Branded to Kill is presented in its original aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1. This new 4K restoration was undertaken by Nikkatsu Corporation and the Japan Foundation from the 35mm original camera negative at Imagica Entertainment Media Services, Inc., and also described as being monaural soundtrack. So, just to repeat, therefore, that we have the Blu-ray and also the 4K disc, and I understand that, again, to my eyes and ears, it appears that the Blu-ray that we have included with this new release is actually the carryover of the high-def transfer of the film, which we had in the earlier Blu-ray released several years back. But now we have the new 4K restoration then on the 4K disc, the 4K UHD disc. So in the new 4K restoration, now made available for the world to see. In this form here, this new 4K disc. And so what to make of the 4K restoration of this great film, Branded to Kill? Now, I have seen this film, Branded to Kill, so many times I've lost count. And the primary way for me to have seen this film was through the Criterion release. And my go-to Criterion release was the Blu-ray. The single disc Blu-ray from several years back, and I thought this was, and I still think, it's a great release because of the way in which this film looked and sounded. I mean, before that we had it here, and I must say that this was, and it's considered a great improvement over the earlier DVD. I mean, this is a very historically significant DVD, don't get me wrong, but this was the go-to for me. It looked and sounded fantastic, and it still does in terms of this high-def Blu-ray presentation, definition, Blu-ray definition presentation. That being said, watching the film on 4K, this 4K restoration, the way it looked, I must say the soundtrack to my ears, I didn't notice any super differences in terms of the soundtrack, so I must rely primarily on the visual cues here. The visual treats of this film, when watched via the 4K restoration, I think, are, simply put, astounding and remarkable. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but I must say that there is not any super vast difference between the high quality of the Blu-ray presentation and the high quality of the 4K restoration. So if you have the single disc Blu-ray and you are happy with that, I think you are in great hands. So don't worry about this. This is still a great way to watch the film Branded to Kill, but there is something about the 4K transfer and the look, the way that depth is revealed, the way that, say, the sunlit sky and the horizon line seem to hit the type of contrast, nuanced slightly perhaps over the Blu-ray, but still giving, for me, in terms of my own subjective experience, giving the 4K resolution a bit of an edge over the Blu-ray presentation. Again, the Blu-ray presentation is still great, but for me, it's those little details, that feeling, the nuanced feeling that really made the 4K restoration viewing such a great experience, blew the roof off type of experience, and things too like steam coming from some food, or maybe the way that interiors and depth is revealed within the interiors, the way that corners are engaged, the way that light and shadow and the contrast and the crispness, exists there. There is that edge, that slight edge that is, again, slight but enough for me to say, for me personally, and again, I apologize for my lack of expertise and command over the technical language of the presentation aspects here, and I really apologize for that. But again, talking from my own gut experience, and my very, say, simplistic way of considering these aspects of the presentation, and once again, I apologize for that. But the point I wanted to make is, for me, the 4K has the edge. For me, the 4K has the edge. It's a slight edge, which is to say that the Blu-ray quality is still very high, but the 4K for me is just that little more edgier and that little more crisper, and therefore that little more that makes it for me the go-to default choice for me whenever I want to revisit this film, Branded to Kill. So I am so thrilled with this. Once again, we'll talk about the supplements. We're not getting anything new in terms of the supplements with regard to the earlier Blu-ray. And it's still a great Blu-ray. And indeed, you're getting that Blu-ray as part of this 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo. So in many ways, the Blu-ray is still very significant. Of course it is. But if you are in love with this film, And if you are looking for what might be considered to be the best way to watch this, I mean, best in air quotes, again, I know that's subjective, but for me anyway, I know that as much as I love the Blu-ray presentation, I still think that the 4K is definitely worth it for me. For you, it might be different. If you have this film already on Blu-ray and you're satisfied with it on Blu-ray, then I think that's enough. Then don't worry. Again, that's your choice, and I respect that totally. And if you choose to keep the Blu-ray only, I think that's a great choice. Also, however, for anyone who has not yet seen this film but is interested in getting this, I think this is a good opportunity. And I must say again, I think for me the 4K is the place to go. So I'm very, very pleased with this. Very pleased with this indeed. Now, in terms of the supplements that are included with this work, once again, I should say that we have the 4K disc and then the Blu-ray disc. And the 4K disc has the film, and then the Blu-ray disc also has the film, but the Blu-ray disc is where you're going to go if you want to go for the supplements. And so, what are the supplements? Once again, I want to draw your attention to the earlier Blu-ray release from several years back. The supplements that we found on this are the exact same supplements that we find today. So to my knowledge, there is nothing newly added in terms of supplements. It would have been really nice to have seen something new, but that's okay. That's okay because what we have is very good indeed. So what do we have in terms of the supplements that we had seen earlier? So first we have a discussion, again dated from 2011. This is approximately 12 minutes. And this is with Seijun Suzuki, the director, and also Masami Kuzu, who is the assistant director. And here, each of them is talking about their experiences with Branded to Kill, perhaps focusing a lot on Suzuki's comments as well. And here we have the idea of working within the Nikatsu system and the idea of a type of almost the way in which creativity, the idea of the battle between trying to have a certain sense of creative spirit and also working in terms of this job, because on the one hand it was a type of work for hire job situation, but on the other hand it was a situation where a lot of creatives were involved, and trying to balance that maybe to the detriment of any type of career path perhaps. But in any event, these are things that are alluded to. And also, Seijun Suzuki is a type of an employee in the company, working basically on a type of a mandate or on orders, essentially, to sort of churn out these works. So while at the same time trying to have a certain type of spirit or drive. We'll talk a little bit about this later, but Guryu Hachiro, for example. So in any event, this is a very interesting set of circumstances. And then in this situation, we have the story that ends up being the film that is Branded to Kill coming along. And so we have, in terms of the way in which the contract actors are described, there's some description here about Joe Shishido and the contract actor status, and also the types of roles that Joe Shishido seemed to have had prior to his appearance in Branded to Kill. And so in many ways it was a type of star-making appearance. Perhaps it wasn't necessarily well, let me put it this way. It was a type of star-making turn, and it's a very almost volcanic, and it has this type of dangerous and wild and sexual, frenzied energy that is like a very much based on instinct, and a type of rage that is also very ultra cool and very seductive and very charismatic at the same time. And you have the feel and style and the look of Joe Shishido, with the one of a kind look of the cheeks and the face. And also to the discussion here. Talks about how this was a film from the 60s, and there are certain ways in which some things could not be shown, such as aspects of showing nudity or the inability to show nudity on film. and sex scenes on film. Well, this is a film that does have a certain degree of nudity and a certain degree of sex scenes, and so how those scenes were shot, and also working with the actors that were heavily involved with these scenes, and the stories behind the casting process. Mariko Ogawa, who plays a very key role in the story and plot, and one of the key relationships between with the main character, the protagonist or the anti-hero. That's the Joshi Shido character. Well, her performance is also mentioned here in that way, and also the idea too of the idea of the boiling rice, how that came about, which is now a very iconic part, but it almost was not to be, and so it's an interesting little quirk or twist of fate as to how the boiling rice aspect came to be part of now this mythic part that is the aspect of Branded to Kill. And also the idea too of the way in which Joshi Shido worked in terms of aspects of sometimes acting in concept acting with improvisational skill, etc. And then, of course, there was the critical reaction and the reception of the film, and indeed the reception by Nikkatsu and what happened afterwards in terms of the firing of the ceasing of employment, the firing of Seijun Suzuki from the company, and that led to legal battle in terms of seeking damages in terms of the legal system. And while ultimately Seijun Suzuki was able to find a certain degree of, say, success in terms of the courts, it did take time, and it did take its toll on his reputation in terms of the immediate aftermath of the Branded to Kill fiasco that was his firing. And also it meant that there was, unfortunately, therefore, perhaps unfairly, there was a way in which that had an adverse impact on his immediate career post Branded to Kill. But perhaps at the end of the day, he has the last laugh, because Branded to Kill is regarded even now as being a bona fide classic, and a bona fide classic of true independent maverick spirit to the max. And so we have those details and others emerging in this great conversation, Branded to Kill conversation, Seijun Suzuki and Masami Kuzu. We had seen it earlier in the earlier Blu-ray release, but it's great to see it again here. So this is the 2011 discussion, approximately 12 minutes. And that's not all, because we also have, again, found on the earlier Blu-ray, we have a discussion, again, from 2011 with the star, Joshi Shido. This is approximately 10 minutes. And here he is sitting in a type of bar and just talking. And suddenly, I mean, there's some moments there that are, during this interview, that are just like, did I just see what I think I saw? That sort of thing. It's almost to the point of being, my goodness, this is a really interesting interview. And I say that also with a certain degree of affection too, because I mean, it's a kind of a one of a kind interview. And in that way, it's very memorable. And so it's great to have a memorable aspect to these interviews. And so Joshi Shido's interview certainly has that. And among other things, too, he talks about details about working with Suzuki, working on this film in terms of his career as a type of romantic lead role, which is something that was not part of his career prior to Branded to Kill. In terms of, also, there was the idea of the assassin or killer roles, working at Nikkatsu. Working in terms of villains, but here he was as a type of anti-hero status and the star of the film. So it again is kind of star-making term, and the idea too of the rice and the rice cooking and that aspect, and butterflies, etc. Working with Seijun Suzuki, working with the other actors too, Annumari and Mariko Ogawa being two of the key actors as well. So again, Joshi Shido is kind of a one of a kind. He's Joshi Shido is a legend, even during the years after Branded to Kill, and so very, very famous in Japan. And so here, there's a type of almost playful playful manner that comes through. Oh, it comes through in this interview in a very memorable way. So it's great to have this interview again with Joe Shishido. We had it before, and now we get it again. So this is the interview with Joe Shishido, talking about Branded to Kill and Seijun Suzuki and his work on this film from 2011, approximately 10 minutes. And then that's not all, because then we have a discussion with Seijun Suzuki, which is described as being from March 1997, and this is totaling approximately 14 minutes. And this is something that we had seen carried over from from not just the Blu-ray, but from earlier as well. So so it is an older dated discussion with Suzuki, but it's great. It's really great. It's a kind of sit down discussion with him, and he goes over a lot of the details that were already mentioned, but he does talk again about the idea of the program picture director work at Nikatsu. He also talks about the idea of film grammar and how he views the film in terms of maybe he had said prior to 1997 how he had been bold in his statements and interviews, how he wasn't a follower of film grammar or something like that. But he acknowledges now that, of course, there is a film grammar in terms of a cut or close-up or things like that. But the point that he was trying to make was that he was trying to go beyond, quote-unquote, the quote-unquote standard aspects and standard grammar presentations of cinema, and going in a way that is, to put it another way, to sort of warp the bounds of what is possible in terms of telling a story of this manner. And so this idea of editing, and also it was also out of necessity. He does talk about his time with Shochiku and how that also informed his approach to shooting, because he said it taught him to shoot only the necessary scenes, and so that meant the editing could be done quickly, because all the necessary scenes were shot, and so it was essentially ready-made to be edited, and so that could save time in the editing booth. And then also, he talks too about entertainment, the importance of entertainment, surprises as entertainment, which I think is a really profound and philosophically potent statement to make. He also talks too about Branded to Kill working with Joe Shishido, talking about some of the intense scenes, the scenes of nudity, etc., and the way in which violence is portrayed. Also talking about the idea of steak versus rice, again, that little quirk of fate that ended up becoming one of the key iconic aspects of the film. And also he talks about the aspect of being fired from Nikatsu and the subsequent lawsuit, entanglements, etc., and how that had a kind of impact, adverse impact on his immediate career immediately post Branded to Kill, perhaps. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he does discuss why it was very important for him in terms of his career and his pride and his well-being to try to get a sense of justice in a situation where he felt unjustly and unfairly fired. So after that, then there's a little bit of a nice detail at the end of this where we see him going out for a drink with the interviewers, and so just talking a little bit, and there's a little bit of anecdotes that's shared in this bar as well. So it's a lovely detail, lovely touch, and it just goes to show it's kind of the lovely nature of Seijun Suzuki. So that's a lovely little Easter egg in a manner of speaking. So that is the discussion with Seijun Suzuki, again dated from 1997. It's great, so please check that out if you can. Again, totaling approximately 14 minutes. And then the supplements end with a trailer, or rounded out by a trailer. So that is the discussion of the supplements. So again, nothing new. It would have been nice to have had something new perhaps, but that's okay, because we're still getting what we had before, which is great. And we are getting the 4K experience again. I think that's really wonderful. So nothing new in terms of supplements. It would have been nice to have seen something new, something added. But again, that's okay at the end of the day, at least as far as I'm concerned. So, it's a discussion on the supplements. And now let's round out our conversation about this work by talking about other aspects, the packaging and the insert as well. I should say that the packaging here, the cover art, Branded to Kill is practically identical to what you'd seen in the earlier Blu-ray, which is really cool with the butterfly motif and the way in which the color pink is added to this. To add to the black and white nature of this, with Joe Shishido's face also in the background there. So that's really cool. I should point out that it is practically identical, although I would say that, at least as far as I can see, the pink color in the new 2023 release seems to be a little bit lighter than the way it appeared on at least this copy that I have, the earlier Blu-ray copy that I have. But it's more or less the same. I would say that maybe the earlier, this, I don't know which is more, do they still have Pepto-Bismol? I'm not sure which is more Pepto-Bismol-like, but in any event, I mean that as a compliment. But in any event, yes, this has a slightly lighter shade of pink in that way. But here, let me. I don't know if you can make that out by looking at the video quality here. I apologize for the poor quality, but you can see it does look a little bit lighter. But again, I think that I don't mind either way. So we have the same continuity there. And I should point out that it has the same write-up in the back there, but there's just a continuity in terms of how it looks in the back. There we go. So that is the presentation of the packaging detail. I should point out in terms of the art, art is credited to art director Sarah Habibi, designer Eric Skillman. Again, I really think this is very cool indeed, and I love the butterfly motif. Incidentally, when I opened the earlier Blu-ray, it looks like this on the inside with the disc and the Blu-ray disc with the butterfly motif like so. But when I opened the this disc, note the detail of this time we have the butterflies in the interior part. We didn't have the butterflies, at least in terms of what I have here. I don't know, maybe it existed in other Blu-ray releases, but just not in the one that I have. But in any event, we have the butterfly motif on the inside of this new 2023 release, which I think is really cool. So butterflies, butterflies, butterflies. If you wanted to escape the butterflies by trying to open it up, oh no, you're still getting more butterflies. So that's very cool. And you're still getting more butterflies in terms of the discs themselves. So it's really nice to see that continuity here. So I should point out that to my eyes, I don't see any difference in terms of the way that the Blu-ray disc looks, except for the wording Blu-ray, and then the way that the 4K UHD discs looks here. So if you can take a look, that's how the Blu-ray looks. And then I'm going to stack the 4K here. It looks pretty much the same, I think. So except again for the wording 4K UHD. So I don't know. It would have been interesting to see if they could have flipped the coloring. You know, I talked a little bit earlier in another video presentation about, say, the Seventh Seal, the Ingmar Bergman 4K UHD Blu-ray release of the Seventh Seal, and how one disc was white, another disc was black. It would have been interesting to try to flip the color scheme to make it more pronounced difference between what the 4K disc is and what the Blu-ray disc is. But in any event, that's okay. You can still tell by what it says. It says 4K for the 4K discs and Blu-ray for the Blu-ray disc. But okay, those are the little color details there. So very cool. So butterflies, 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 which is really great. So. Maybe it makes one feel like our main character. You know, our main character wants to maybe, wants to do something, but cannot evade the butterflies for good or for otherwise. But in any event, yes. So it probably puts us maybe subliminally in the mindset of our hero or anti-hero. And if that's the case, that's a really cool little subliminal trick indeed by Criterion. So well done, bravo, kudos to Criterion for that, if indeed that was the plan. If not, a great thing indeed still. Now, let us talk about the booklet or the insert, which I would say is, for me, maybe it's a minor point. It's still a minor critique. It's still a critique that I would have, which is this. The earlier Blu-ray, which is again right here, had the insert, which at the time of this was a staple booklet. So this is the earlier Blu-ray from 2011 staple booklet, and I love this staple booklet. And see, you have the butterfly motif in the staple booklet, and it had a kind of robust paper, and it had the pictures and everything. It was really great that way. With the Tony Rayns essay, and I'll talk about the Tony Rayns essay in a little bit. But unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I'm not a fan of the fold-out, the 2023 4K UHD plus Blu-ray is relying on the fold-out presentation, and so it means a number of things. It means, I think, yes, we are not getting all of the pictures. We're getting some of the pictures, but we're not getting all of the pictures. So as you can see, we have some of the pictures that are included, like these frames here, these black and white frames here. They're indeed part of the packaging or part of the experience that we got in terms of the essay, but we're not getting all of the pictures here. So, for example, we're not getting, say, this picture, which had appeared on which appeared in the 2011 booklet, stable booklet. So we're not getting that, and we're not getting some others as well. So I point out to, for example, these rectangled shots of, say, the mouth and the eye and the lips. But I look at the back. We don't get any other rectangle shots, and I would point out that in the earlier Blu-ray release, we had gotten not just the rectangled shots of the lips and the eye, but we also got some other rectangle shots here, like so. So, again, it would have been nice to have had the staple booklet replicated as well. And because it means, this is, I think, a great example of an illustration of why I'm a fan of the stable booklet over the fold-out. It means you get a more robust, more pages with the booklet, the stable booklet, and there's more opportunity to put in more stuff. Namely, in this instance, we see the omission of certain photographs and the like. So, so again, that's a critique. In the grand scheme of things, I would say it's a minor critique at the end of the day, but it's still a critique I'd like to make. But in any event, that is the state of things. Today we have not the stable booklet, unfortunately, but we have the fold-out. But it's not all glass half empty, because in fact we can look at it as a glass half full type of scenario, because among other things we have the great carryover of the great essay by Tony Rayns. We had it in the earlier booklet, and now we're getting it again here, this essay. It's really wonderful. It's called Reductio ad Absurdum, Suzuki Seijun's Branded to Kill. And Suzuki Seijun, the way in which the Japanese names appear in this essay, this is how names are handled in the Japanese language, with the last name first, or the family name first, and the given name or the first name second. So my name in Japanese would be Beppu Daisuke, and so here that's why the title is given Suzuki Seijun. And that note is actually given at the start or prior to the start of the essay, and it is a great, great essay. This is a great essay, and it's great because, among other things, it talks about the history of Nikkatsu and the sort of the creative forces at Nikkatsu, let's see, the history of the firing or the dismissal by Nikkatsu of Suzuki. And it does talk to about Guryu Hachiro, and also the film itself, and the idea of there's maybe connections with history, Japanese history and Chinese history, in terms of the application of the hierarchy of the ranking of the assassins, which is, I think, a fascinating detail, and also connections with wuxia, that Tony Rayns makes, which is also really fascinating, and the like, and how this figures into sort of jokes and maybe bits of humor that are also very much respected and paid homage to this very day by filmmakers like Jim Jarmusch and others. So this is a classic essay. It's one of the best essays, and still one of the best essays. So you're getting a lot, and then some. You're getting some details too about the lawsuit and the subsequent legal entanglements. But you're also getting, it's very easy to digest, easy to understand, I think, and you're also getting such a comprehensive overview of Branded to Kill and Seijun Suzuki and his career, and the importance of Nikkatsu and the controversy at Nikkatsu, and what was to follow. as well as focusing in on the film itself. So regardless of how I might feel about the fold-out format and the paper, etc., at the end of the day, the inclusion or the continuation or the carryover of this great essay is something to be celebrated indeed. So if you haven't read this great essay by Tony Rayns, now is your chance. Now is your chance. So here it is as part of this new release, 2023, by Criterion, of Branded to Kill. Again, this time using the 4K UHD format. I'm going to put it back like so, and then closing the case. And that concludes my discussion of what I wanted to say about this release, 2023 release of Branded to Kill by the Criterion Collection. So at the end of the day, for me, I think there are some critiques that I've made, but I am still very much taken by the 4K presentation that's found on the 4K disc. And so at the end of the day, therefore, for me, while I am very much still supportive of the Blu-ray, and I'm very happy for anyone who would like to stick with the Blu-ray, because you're having a lot of the quality is still there. For me, I think the 4K edges it out slightly, but still edges it out. So it'll. This is enough for me to say that I think it's worthwhile to have the 4K release if you are so inclined. But again, not to worry, because you're still getting a great deal of quality with the earlier Blu-ray. So any choice you have, I think, is going to be great, no matter what. And if you haven't seen this film yet, wow. Now is your opportunity indeed, my friends. Now is your opportunity to watch this, which is the work by Seijun Suzuki. That is Branded to Kill. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great, great movies. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.